And, and now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Sarah Dawkins. Sarah is co-founder and constant source of nourishment to the Gatekeeper Trust, as well as to Zoance and the Francis Bacon Research Trust with Peter. Sarah loves and teaches panurismy, a form of sacred dance exercise, which harmonizes us with the spirit of place. And she's going to share with us some explorations and pilgrimage experiences recently within her local landscapes. So over to you, Sarah, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen. It's lovely to be here and to have witnessed and been part of such an amazing day. I'm really full. And like the other speakers, I feel walking the green path is synonymous of walking the path of the listening heart, of friendship. And I'd like to share something of time spent in pilgrimage or just being and making friends with spirit of place of the special areas within our own local landscape, which is in the Cygnus area of the British Zodiac, centred on High Cross. And this straddles North Oxfordshire and Warwickshire, and also includes the watershed of England and the very special Rollright Stones. So this year, it's a joy to go to the Rollright Stones and to be able to dance panurismy with our friends. And as Stephen said, and as David said this morning, panurismy was brought to us by Benza Duno, a Bulgarian mystic. And his spirituality was embedded in the dance through the gestures of the dance, the intent behind the gestures, and the beautiful music that Dunov composed to enhance and create the movements. And one of the very first gestures, which I'd just like to show you, of the dance is giving. So if you can see, you're unfurling like a spiral, and you're giving out, but you're also receiving back to the heart. So that is one of the very first gestures, the sense of giving to your landscape and then receiving back. So I'd like to start the slideshow now. And here we go. Can you see this? So we have a photograph of a wicker woman, a wise woman, who stands nearby to the Rollright Stone Circle, and she's definitely pointing the way. And my next slide is a diagram of the British Zodiac with the Milky Way. You can see this yellow line here, the arc coming from the cusp of Gemini Taurus to the cusp of Scorpio Sagittarius. And Cygnus, our area, is here. It's almost at the apex of the Milky Way. And Cygnus the swan in Celtic tradition is the totem of Bridget, the divine feminine, the source. And in many traditions, Cygnus is the place from which the universe is sung into creation. And culture which shows us how to connect with nature, each other, and the divine spark or nous within each of us, ourselves and nature. The stories and myths of this area are about sovereignty, sovereignty in the heart, the relationship to the land and community. True sovereignty of the heart holds the grail. And here's a detail of the north-south landscape, which is Cygnus in the British Zodiac. So we have the Rollright Stones coming up north to Warwick and Kenilworth, with Brails as the heart, as the crossing point of Cygnus. And then there's a complementary swan flying along the Milky Way from Stratford upon Avon at its root, Deneb, the star Deneb, coming up to Banbury. So we have two swans in our area. We can see them as mortal and immortal. And this is our Rollright Stone Circle, our sense of the route of our swan, Deneb, one of the two swans. And on St. George's Day, the 23rd of April this year, Peter and a small group of us went to dance Panurhythmy. And I asked Peter to come and witness our Panurhythmy, because Bensaduno talks about how the dance helps us to raise our vibration and to bring harmony and healing to the land. So I wanted to know what Peter saw. St. George's Day is connected to the spear shaker energy, the light of inspiration which flows through us to awaken the life force within. So we knew it was a PowerPoint within the cycle of the year. And we danced just in front of the southerly entrance. So that's the southerly entrance, and there's the north stone. So we danced here. And so we danced anti-clockwise. And as we were dancing, Peter was aware of a huge angelic being within the stone circle. And the circle itself appeared as a cauldron to him. And the being was moving in a clockwise direction, stirring the life force of nature. And the dancing was like a cogwheel, starting this interior motion off. And the angel said to Peter that this was a maiden's breath day. And the dance was doing the maiden's work of breathing on the fire of the goddess's cauldron to keep the fire steady. Peter showed that cycle this morning. And this image then led us to viewing the stone circle as Ceridwen's cauldron, with the heal-all, life-giving elixir or holy grail within. It seems as if we were being asked to stir or breathe on the cauldron 9 times a year in a 40-day cycle. This could be our act of service within the Cygnus landscape at the base of the swan at Deneb, because Deneb is a very special star. In other traditions, Deneb is a birthplace of a child of light. So in the Egyptian symbology, Cygnus is the womb of Nut, the goddess who is the Milky Way, and she swallows the sun at sunset and then gives birth to the sun at sunrise, gives birth to the creative force at sunrise. So this image of the cauldron brought me back to our very first explorations in our landscape, and of seeing this landscape as a grail cup. And I've drawn this as a sort of schematic in this diagram. And the bottom of the stem, which I think is so important, certainly after hearing Louise talk about water, is set on the river Windrush. And then that winds its way through to Maybush, where it goes to the river Isis. And then it goes on to the Thames and goes out to the North Sea and to Europe. The stem follows the north-south ley line, and around here we have the linum long barrow, and then come up to the base, which is the Rollright Stones. Then the curve of the cup actually follows ridges of hills. So we live around here, and that's at Shennington. So that's a shining hill. So you have Epwell and other hills, and you're coming up, there we go, up to the Burton Dasset hills here. And on the other side, you go similarly in a curve through Goose Hill, Ilmington Hills, and you end up with Meehan Hill, a very special hill south of Stratford-upon-Avon. So here is the River Windrush, and we've spent many wonderful hours walking along the riverbank. So to come back to Peter's vision and linking with the myth of Ceridwen and her cauldron and the 9 maidens, we've been dancing and pilgrimaging at the Rollrights and within Cygnus, within this rhythm of 40 days. And it's interesting that when Venus transforms from the evening star to the morning star by going either behind or in front of the sun, it takes around 40 days. and 40 days is often used to denote a period of transformation. So the Rollright Stones. So it's actually a complex. This is an aerial photo from their website. And you have a complex of the Whispering Knights. It's a dolmen about 5,800 years old. And then the Stone Circle, which is 1,000 years later. And then another 1,000 years later, there's the Kingstone. So there is a series of energy points, if you like. And these are on their own individual north-south ley lines. So the south is down here, and the Kingstone will be looking north. So the legend of the Rollrights is one of the goddess of the land, challenging an aspiring king to see or understand the land. His pride gets in the way, and he and his followers are then turned to stone. A timely cautionary tale, maybe. And after greeting the kindly luminous beings, the spirit of place, we usually walk to the Whispering Knights to honour the ancestors with song, attunements and offerings. Durnov composed songs in the Vatan language. And Vatan is a pre-Sanskrit language, which when sung, we feel has the energy to link us with the golden thread of life through the ages. And here, there are also legends of the stones being an oracle. So is this the origin of the name of the Whispering Knights? Do they whisper to our hearts? And there are stories of the stones moving down the valley to the south to a water source in Little Rollright. It's about a mile away. So it's as if the water energy feeds the stone. Here is the stone circle again. So we're closer to the entrance. And here we are, many years ago actually, dancing the panurhythmy. So you see there are gestures within the dance. And over the road now, which is a bit sad, there is still a road which is a very busy road. There's the Kingstone. It's shaped as it is now through many pilgrims chipping away at a piece of stone for good luck, which is a bit sad. So this is possibly why they are protecting it. So there's a rise just above the Kingstone, and then there's a very, very clear view to the north and Braille's Hill. So this is Braille's Hill here with the trees on top. That's the heart centre of our landscape temple of Cygnus. And below are the Witchford Woods. So here the woods. Which coming from the word Whicker, the people of the area. And the Whicker were the children or tribe of Hugh, renowned for their knowledge, wisdom and healing powers, Hugh being light. And the name of witch is derived from Whicker and originally meant an illumined person who was both healer and teacher. And Braille's Hill is actually on an east-west ley line from Banbury to Breedon Hill. And legend has it that the king's coffin, so the local king, would be taken up the hill and left overnight on top of the hill for his soul to ascend to heaven. This is very interesting in the sense the swan is a symbol of the soul flying to heaven. If you think of Orpheus and the swan, when he died, his soul flew to heaven and became Cygnus, the swan. And interestingly, Breedon, the hill of bride Bridget, is the totem of the swan. So the energy here is very expansive, and we often sing up the line using Durnov songs or the songs that you've heard during the day, the Gatekeeper chants, visualizing love and light on that vibration of sound. And it's a growing friendship and heart connection with the area. And sometimes it's enough just to lie on the land, being part of and at one with nature, being in that liminal space between past and future where everything's possible At the autumn equinox this year, on the 20th of September, we had the impulse to pilgrimage from the Rollrights up to Guy's Cliff, up here, which is in the sparking point between the brow and the crown. So it's that point which is where the energy leaps from the brow to the crown chakra, creating the third eye, the eye which sees truly. And in a cathedral or church, the sparking point would be at the communion rail, where we receive communion, the grail. And this time, when we started at the Rollrights, bees kept coming to us. Bees were the theme of the day. Maybe our challenge was, are we able to make honey in our hearts? So we travelled up to Pillerton Priors and Pillerton Hersey. That's the crossing point of these two swans. And Pillerton Priors has got the remnants of a chapel to Mary Magdalene, and Pillerton Hersey is dedicated to Mary the Virgin. And here's the east end of St Mary's, which with its green and rose-tinted medieval glass. I love it. I think it's just so beautiful. And you have yew trees behind, which is adding to the green. But I love that sense of the medieval glass having the green and the rose. And then we discovered this tapestry of a golden grail flanked by two angels in the landscape in the chancel of the church. Apologies for the quality of the photo. I love these day signs. We also had bees coming to us the whole time, and there was even a Mr. B's carpentry van in Pillerton Hersey. So on we went. We continued our way north to Warwick with its impressive medieval castle on the River Avon. And here you can see Guy's tower at the corner of the castle. But we didn't, and it's on the River Avon. This is the River Avon. But we didn't stop. We carried on to Guy's Cliff, which is north of Warwick. And these photos show how Guy's Cliff is now. So you've got Guy's cave. So this is the cave he used when he was a hermit. And this is a view over the river. So it was said that originally it was a Druid grove. When the Romans were here, it was a Mithraic temple. In the 6th century, there was a chantry dedicated to Mary Magdalene. And then after the dissolution of the monasteries, it was made into a secular building, which was actually burnt down during the filming of a Sherlock Holmes film. But the energy there is still strong. Outwardly, it doesn't look very happy, but the energy is still very strong. And there's a lot of research now being done in the area. But what of the myth of Guy? History, initiatory story, fantasy, earth energy. Myth is created when all of these come together. Poets create these myths to convey wisdom. In this myth, Guy of Warwick was a true knight, pilgrim and hermit in the 10th century, who was immortalised in Middle English romance legends from the 12th to the 17th century, and these became part of the matter of England. Legends of English history. The narrative details are maybe fictional, but were accepted as fact by the end of the 13th century, when the romance was repeated in many books in France and Italian translations, and the scribes all becoming authors of the work too. The story travelled far and wide, even to the Sultan of Byzantium. So the basic story goes like this. Guy was the son of a steward whose birth was marked by wondrous portents. And he grows up with renowned physical abilities and so is called to the court of the Earl of Warwick and falls in love with Phyllis, the daughter of the Earl. But before she can accept Guy's love, Phyllis is adamant that Guy has to prove himself to make bold achievements and noble actions shine abroad. So Guy goes off to France, where he rescues a damsel in distress, and in Germany proves himself in the jousts, winning the hand of Blanche in the process. But Guy is faithful to Phyllis, so he returns. You can see the arrows on the map. So that was one of his first forays, and then you can see how he travelled through other times. So he comes back to Phyllis, but she immediately sends him off again to become the best knight in the whole world. He travels within Europe and Asia Minor, and he has many battles, encounters, fighting dragons, boars, and befriending lions. And when he returns, Guy finally marries Phyllis. They have a son, and Guy is made the Earl of Warwick with all his duties. However, when Guy is away on an official duty, their son is kidnapped. Phyllis says the only way to get their son back is for Guy to do penance, an atonement for his deeds, and to go on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And for her part, Phyllis vows chastity and gives away her wealth to help the poor. So now Guy goes on his travels, but rather than having outer glory, he swears to forego all the fighting and to become a friend to the land and to all the different communities that he travels to. And so he ends up in Jerusalem and Bethlehem and here, and then he comes home via this. In story, he honours Mary Magdalene at Les Saintes Maries de la Mer, and then he comes through the Languedoc and then through the Camino to Santiago de Compostela when he comes back to St. Michael's Mount. So he left on his pilgrimage from St. Michael's Mount, and then he returned to St. Michael's Mount. On his return, Phyllis doesn't recognise him, and Guy decides to live as a hermit in the cave that we saw. Phyllis is unaware of him returning till on his deathbed. We have the scene here. He sends her his wedding ring, whereupon they are reunited. It's an extraordinary story with many different versions, but the main thrust being of a journey from outer glory to friendship on pilgrimage, and then an inner life of reflection and prayer, finally being reunited with his beloved. And by the 14th century, the Norman Beauchamp family, who were the Earls of Warwick, were very aware they needed to anchor themselves within the land in order to have authority. And this is Thomas Beauchamp, the 11th Earl of Warwick. And he commissioned a storyteller called Rouse to draw up a genealogical line connecting him to Guy of Warwick. But Rouse went further and put in a link to Aeneas, one of the very first swan knights, children of the Grail Knights. And in this swan myth, the swans have a necklace around the throat. You can see it here, almost like a crown. And this is similar to the Druid talk, which symbolises speaking the truth. The bards, the poets, the initiated storytellers who speak wisdom. They were symbolised as swans. It is said, if you speak the truth, you're speaking about love. Your words will inspire and create. Symbolically, they create the perfect circle or cup, because what they speak is pure knowledge and truth. So I think it's fascinating that Thomas Beauchamp incorporated the swan into his heraldry. As shown on the helmet, can you see that is the swan with his necklace, and here's the swan coming out of his helmet. So in our pilgrimage, our time at Guy's Cliff, rather than going to the cave, which is difficult, it's not open all the time, Our time was mainly spent on this very old bridge over the River Avon. It felt very important to link with the river. And we offered our songs and offerings of roses and intent. And we're very aware that the River Avon flows west to the more famous Sweet Swan of Avon, Shakespeare at Stratford upon Avon, which is at the root chakra demeb of the complementary swan flying along the Milky Way. So they're connected. I love that sense of connection. It's as if there's a cauldron or grail full of wisdom within the Shakespeare plays being sent around the world. Whilst we were on the bridge, on the river, at the completion of our pilgrimage, a saying from Bensaduno came to mind. Be brave, be strong, go out into the world and sing songs of joy. And maybe these songs of joy can be summed up in this affirmation. And this is a photograph of sunset up in the Rila Mountains, where Durnov did his teaching. So maybe our songs of joy can embody the peace of love and the blessings of love flow out upon the earth. Thank you. I'll come out of, oops, there we go. Yeah.
Thank
So
you,
it's
Sarah.
very...
Thank you, Sarah. I just want to say thank you. That was beautiful, but please continue.
No. I was just going to say thank you for listening and hearing, and that sense of affirmation in the landscape. As people have been saying during the day, is so potent, isn't it? It's potent for ourselves and in our own homes, but also the landscape. Yeah.
And the cosmos.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, yes. Are you going to blow out the candles, Sarah?
Yes, I would like to blow out the candle. I'd like to say thank you to all the kindly, luminous beings that have been with us today. The seen and the unseen, in the past, the present and the future. With great gratitude, we send out this light. Kindly, luminous beings, guardians of this place, we thank you for your hospitality, and may love bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I really don't want to say anything more than that, but I would just like to say we hope you've really enjoyed the day, and I'd really like to thank our speakers and Mike Newton and Louise and Amelia Coe for organising it, working so hard, and of course you all for joining us, and to all those who've become friends. The recordings will be on the website in due course. We'll send you a link, and do check the website and come on some upcoming Pilgrims weekends. There's some really lovely things happening. So thank you and farewell in your journeys and your connecting with and loving the land and the cosmos.